Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. Okay, it works. Thank you for your interest in the agriculture part of this panel. The title is maybe a bit awkward, but when I started with GMOs and then suddenly saw all this action against GMOs and even against science, I thought, what's going on? And then I realized that actually it's not only for plants, but for many things that scientists do, that there is some blocks in ideology. So I thought that leave this title and see how we feel about it. Well, if you see all these landscapes, we know they are disappearing, that with the overpopulation, more and more land is turned in productive land for that animal that now will be 10 billion people pretty soon. We could talk hours about it, but see what can science say or the approaches to keep at least some of the wildlife while we try to solve the society problems. And then I have to be maybe a bit didactic. It's a whole, but let's consider the science. Let's consider the science that does the discoveries, and can say a word of this agrobacterium story and the gene engineering. But think also that products are not made at universities, that the science is developed there. And if you want to innovate, it's the private sector who does the innovation. And we see what structures do we have to innovate. And innovation succeeds only if the products are delivered. So you have the whole world of the economy, but economy, that's sociology, that's society. There is no real laws of economy, well, in microeconomy maybe, but we'll not challenge you at that level. But the most important is, if we talk life science, to see that we are part of this life science, so that sociology is really something very, very, very crucial. And it's not thought well enough. We are not confronted with all the experience that people have in sociology. And that's a leitmotif I will come back to. So in the discovery part, the real world of plants had a major breakthrough when we could show that in nature, there is genetic engineering. There is horizontal DNA transfer between bacteria and plants. That is this crown goal, and that's what we started studying. And then we saw, since it was going on, that we could use it as a tool for bringing pieces of DNA, genes, and express them in plants. That was in the whole period of the 1970s, and in 1983, everything took off. We immediately started a company, Plant Genetic Systems, and we did three major things. The Bacillus thuringiensis, making plants that make their own insecticides so that you don't have to spray. That was a success. We can come back to that. Also, there was a lot of requests to have less toxic herbicides, and we looked for some herbicides. Monsanto had his Roundup, so we did it for a Japanese company, Meiji. In those days it was called Basta. And then hybrid vigor. And very interestingly, and we can come up later on the discussion, this hybrid vigor is an enormous success for canola, reached the market, the farmers wanted it, and then the major companies decided, okay, that's going on, Canada wants it, but we will not use it further. So it was possible in the early 90s to use it all over for developing countries. For mustard, that's exactly the same nearly as canola and so on. We can talk about that. But most of that was the block in communication, because some people thought it was wise to say that GMOs probably were dangerous, and if probably they were dangerous, we had to attack them. And why these organizations did it, we can talk later. But let's go back to the science. We all were fascinated in the 60s by the possibilities of molecular biology. When in the 70s gene cloning was there for the microorganisms, and with the agrobacterium we could go to the world of plants, of course, we took off, and absolutely all of us who did this work were molecular biologists. People coming from microbiology. Nobody knew anything about agriculture. So people who were in agriculture, who were in the real plants, they thought, oh, these people just want some hype. What they are doing, nothing is useful, what they are doing. And it could have been remained like that. So I just take this slide for saying that's so crucial. If you want to do, so it's like a doctor would only do the molecular biology part and never would have really contact with patients or really doing it. It's absurd. But in the plant world, it was, and it is still, so many people in agriculture take enormous care, have an enormous knowledge on growing trees or growing plants, growing fruits and so on, and they don't want to hear about molecular biology because it's the devil, it's GMOs. And the people in molecular biology, since they are snubbed by the people who are in the breeding companies, that's what they feel, they cannot make. So please, urgently, if you are in plants, talk to each other, and that's in general for science. Don't be taken also by ideology and by rationality, go on. Because the outside world, that's the way they look to the trees. So a painting from 1933 when Hitler took power, but that's just to show 1933. It's, of course, a famous René Magritte, and it's called La Condition Humaine. And so La Condition Humaine, well, that's really seeing with your emotions, nature, decide with your emotions. That's what we always did since a very long time. We forget that period of enlightenment, 300-400 years, there's nothing. The science went in that period fantastic. If you take it to at the level of chemistry, physics, mathematics, all what good done. Look to the Feynman lectures in 1962-63, when students asked Feynman, but all these quantum equations, what does they mean? Feynman said, I don't know what they mean, but look what we can do with it all. So that's the basic science. In life science, well, it's slightly different. We don't have so much, and we saw yesterday how far the medical field progressed. But this field is 50, 60 years old, in the molecular part of plants. So we really have to see everything in point of evolution. And I think in point of the whole of biology. So I quote the book of Dawkins, the Ancestor's Time, the Ancestor's Tale. It's worth it to really have a feeling for evolution. But if you really have doubt about evolutions, I think it's a good way to the way that Nick Lane from University College London, the vital question, how he described it, how after 4.6 billion years ago the Earth was there, how from the inorganic membranes could come, first of course organic molecules, membranes, and how cells. And then for billions of years there were only microorganisms. And then suddenly diversity took off if the eukaryotes were there. We'll not talk about that, but say it and know that rather recently, everybody is interested in the microbiome. Microbiome is there for all living organisms, not only for humans, where the newspapers talk about it. All the plants can only grow. Soil science will be an enormous breakthrough if we know how can reconstruct soils, and through engineering of microorganisms and plants and biomaterial, how we will do it. It's only a story that's starting at the moment. Now back to agriculture. Everybody is afraid of this mass agriculture of some products. It's absolutely against nature. I took a dramatic photo just to that people really would see, yes, that must be evil, this intensive agriculture. But okay, Malthus said 300 years ago, the world will starve. We cannot keep up with the agriculture production. Okay, human ingenuity developed all kinds of tricks and tools, and including recently, when it was badly needed, the fertilizers and all the chemicals. And so it goes on. So we are now with 7.5 billion, so we need the productivity and the quality. Is it polluting? Yes, we would like that it is intercropping, like the poor people in Africa do, but many are starving. Really 1 billion are starving, because the FAO says 800 million, but they only count those who are starving a year. I think 3 months seasonal hunger is already extremely cruel and unacceptable. Why we have to wait for the statistics that it is a year of starving? So there is enormous drama, but that's what we have to do with science, see that in the areas where the starvation is, where the malnutrition is, because yesterday we heard of the problems of nutrition, but it's very crucial, the quality, because we have the story of the stunted children that make stunted adults because they were missing microelements, missing some vitamins, and the only way is to give them the right access on the quality, not only the quantity, but the quality of them. And so, yes, and repeat it, that's overpopulation. That's what's really the problem. And if politically or philosophically people cannot handle it, well, temporary science will do it. But we have to get off from that, because it's not only the humans, but all what we take in agriculture, all the animals for husbandry or even pets. If people have made statistics on that, 98% of the surface of the world is already used by humans. It's horrible, the situation. Yesterday we talked about all the new epidemics that come and all the problems, but Malthus could not see the environmental damage that would come. He would have reacted, hopefully, much more harder than he did in his days. So that's the challenge we have. And the talk that I give, this introduction, is mostly to see how innovation has its enemies. Everybody has fear of innovation. The word fear in our society is very important in sociology. It's not only there because the right-wing populists inculcate fear and bring so much havoc in our society. It's all over, reacting against science, against the solutions that scientists propose, is part of it. Calestos Juma, he just died, unfortunately. He was a professor of sociology in Harvard. He's from Kenya. He describes, well, coffee, cacao, how many, during these hundreds of years when it came, how people, churches, political leaders, imams discussed, is it really good? Should we commercialize it? But out of that, it goes on, this further fear. And France even have in its constitution the precautionary principle. But the precautionary principle is a principle of inactivity. It's not because you can imagine that something would be a risk that you have to block it. But that's what is done by the green movement. So that's why I give the term ideology. Already the Jansenists in Port-Royal, you see the date, the end of the 18th century, they say, yes, precautionary principle is to abandon passion and fear. And all you have to be not afraid that something goes wrong. You have to see and calculate the probability that something will go wrong. And if you have no proof, at the moment there is no proof that GMOs are dangerous for humans or animals. And so if there is no proof, there is no reason to be frightened for it. And that is the system that we gave. So as a nearly final slide, I would say that already Leonardo da Vinci, who was an example of all new engineering and all kind of new tools that immediately when people saw it, used it, that was there, but that he said, I have offended God and mankind by doing so little with my life. So I think for scientists, it's a good quote. And to progress, I didn't think about that. That you can ensure that you don't harm anybody by saying I didn't think about it, but you really have to do it. If you think there are arguments against it, please discuss with people that maybe know it. And that's the slide that for 30 years I'm finishing with. That's the tropical forest that is cut up every day since 30 years. All over in Indonesia. It was Malaysia before, Borneo, now other islands in Indonesia. New Guinea will follow. Brazil is always following. The green people, they protest, but they campaign and manifest against GMOs, against science, and say against the capitalists who are using science and make money with science. I think you know enough about society that I shouldn't start talking about that. But at the moment, all scientists have the responsibility that in an agricultural field we would be able to go. Thank you.